Hello and welcome to another Battle Games in Middle-earth painting tutorial. I'm Harry and today I'm painting up the Elendil I converted using mostly parts from King LSR. If you want to see how I did the conversion, check out my other videos, and if you want the full paints list, it's in the description below. But I start by dry brushing the chainmail in lead belcher. Then I'm about to paint the plates on his chest and sword in the same colours too. That's anyway, I'll move on. All of this is just in standard dry brushing, nothing too fancy required at these early stages. Now, the rest of my Numenor have a splash of blue on the little tabards on the spears, and the captains I have, they have blue cloaks, but for the royalty of the Numenor, I wanted to make sure they stand out a little bit, so I went with purple as the main colour. And for that I use Naggaroth Knight to capture their lofty status. That goes on the barding of the horse and also on the cloak. I reckon it looks royally good. Then the horse bits. I paint the skin of the horse dry hard, but... okay, alright, no more horse voice. Yep, you get it? Yep. But dry bark gives the skin a nice dark tone. I wanted Isildur's horse to be white, so they'll contrast each other nicely if Elendil's horse is brown. Now, using a similar technique to what I used on the Numenor warriors, I put a layer of storm vermin fur on the rest of the visible clothing. If you've seen my Numenor video, which is linked below, you'll see how I'm trying to tie the heroes into the basic scheme here, but just adding a little bit of jazz here and there. Anyway, with Avaland Sunset, I start adding even more jazz. Okay, enough with the jazz now. But you can definitely see how the contrast is already working. This is stuff straight from the colour wheel you may remember or have forgotten from school art lessons. Essentially, some colours are opposites and contrast each other really nicely. So purple and yellow are two of those. Done, and definitely jazzy. No more jazz, thank you. We move on to Elendil's face and hands, which I do in a standard Caucasian tone, but I put a layer of Mournfang brown on first here, rather than washing it later, which I guess you could still do. It just helps get in those recesses well and truly shaded in advance, and just a different approach which requires a little more highlighting later rather than washing. While that's drying, I get brown to business on the leather straps with Baneblade brown. I'm trying to use as many different shades as possible of brown just to make sure I differentiate the colours of leather with the horse. Next, with Retributor armour, I give the king some bling. This is actually quite a fiddly process. I have a good look at the armour in advance and decide I want to basically trim all of his plate armour with gold. And also I add a bit of gold on the helmet and on the horse's head plate too. It's delicate work, but it really adds some... No, it doesn't add any jazz. It just adds... I don't know. It just definitely adds a little something. But as we close that bit off, you can see there's some real colour to it. All the horse barding is blinged up as well, along with the sword, the shield edges and the helmet. Now, with Reichland Fleshshade, we take the edge off it with a quick wash. Then we're into the nitty-gritty detailing using Administratum Grey, which is a light grey, and I start picking out the details which will eventually become white. That is basically just the shield emblem and the beard. Staying with the grey, I use Dawnstone to start the highlight of the non-purple clothing. We will add a bit of showbiz to it later, but for now, just a little extra highlighting. Some quick washes now with Lamentor's Yellow Glaze, which I'm convinced does absolutely nothing to the yellow, and also Druchii Violet, which definitely adds a nice bit of depth to the purple. Back to the horse bits again. I use Gore Browne to highlight. Okay, I'll stop. But why the long face, horse? Yeah, I thought that horse voice gag was quite good earlier, so I thought I'd bring it back. Anyway, with that, I Gore a quick layer to pick out the tops of the horse muzzles, Gore Browne, and leave the dryad bark in the recesses, of course. Next, I'm never happy with purple colours to highlight with, so I mix this unholy concoction of Naggaroth Night, Demonette Hide and Screamer Pink. Essentially, the Demonette Hide is too dusty on its own, but Screamer Pink is too, well, pink. So together, mixed together along with the Naggaroth Night, they make something which is warmer but not too pink. And I use that to highlight the cloak and the barding. Luckily, this old LSR model, which has been converted, has some ace folds in the material, which really make this sort of paint job a treat. Next, dust. Zandri dust? Anyone? No? Dust. Zandri dust? No, okay, I'll stop that. With that, I highlight the leather straps just to give them a really tanned leather vibe to them, to make sure they really contrast with the horse's coat. Back to the metal now, and with Rune Fang steel, I crack on with giving it the armour and chainmail some real shine to it. It's labour intensive, but for a king, it feels only right to have some properly shiny armour. Back to the barding then, and I just add a little more of each of the Screamer Pink and Demonette Hide into the mix we used earlier to add a final edge height to the very tops of all the folds of the material on the cloak and the barding. Initially, after doing this, I was quite happy with it as being basically done for the purple, but after using him on the tabletop, I decided I want to revisit that and put a little bit of extra detail in, which we'll come to later on. But first, the skin gets a highlight with Cadian flesh tone, and here I'm just picking out the details like the nose and the cheek. There's actually not a lot visible between the beard and the helmet, but there is some detail, include the lips, which I get done. Then, with white, I do the eyes with a quick but careful horizontal line using a fine detail brush, also paint the beard, and I also pick out the emblem on the shield, being careful to make sure I leave in the detail in the recesses. Now, with Abaddon, or Abaddon, however you want to fancy pronouncing it, Abaddon Black, I paint the eyes of the horse. Never paint the whites of a horse's eye unless they're panicked horses, which I suppose occasionally you might want if they're in battle. But here, Elendil's chilled out, so the horse is relaxed too. Now to continue, take a deep breath. We dot the eyes very carefully. And then we do some more brightening up of the yellow with Flashgit's yellow. Ironically, after the washes earlier, it looked a little dirty, so I just used that to brighten it up a little. But now, where I start going rogue to add a little bit of pizzazz to the, basically to everything. With the base yellow, and of course I highlight it later with Flashgits, I do a little line of trim on the grey clothing. I mentioned earlier I wanted something to make it stand out compared with the warrior's grey fatigues, and I think this looks truly royal. It was tricky to keep the line of a sort of consistent thickness, but I really do like the result. Then, after a little more detailing on the bling with Liberator Gold, we're basically done. I based it with some snow made out of bicarbonate of soda mixed with PVA, and also some snowy tufts and a sort of greyish dry brush on the black sand. And then I thought that was it. But as I said, I knew I wanted something extra on the barding. Not jazz this time, but a bit of spice to make him truly stand out. So I go back to the back of the barding, detail brush in hand, quivering in anticipation. The last time I attempted this was when I used to play Warhammer 40k and got the original Harlequin set many years ago. Painting those diamond checkered trousers was next to impossible for a beginner painter. But here, on a slightly bigger bit of barding, I thought there may well be hope of it looking good.
Just a fool's hope.
So I started drawing a grid line on the back of the horse with a fine detailed brush armed with Lamenter's yellow. The grids are basically diagonal lines in both directions which crisscross to form, hopefully, identical diamond shapes. I mean, I'd be exaggerating if I said that actually happened. They came out pretty wonky in places and barely any of the diamonds are the same size. It was also really tricky to do with the camera in the way. But this is how they ended up, and after a bit of neatening and straightening out with the purple and the yellow, as well as highlighting it with the Flashgits and a little bit of Flashgits yellow mixed with white, I was pretty happy with it. As long as you don't see both sides of the barding at the same time, they look pretty good and symmetrical, as long as you don't see both sides. In fact, the end result delivers exactly what I was hoping for.
Hot and spicy
Minis.
Yeah, boy.
So there you have it. Elendil, King of Gondor, Arnor, and various other places. I can't remember the lore. And I also do Isildur in the same way, but without those tricky diamonds on to make sure the king has the fanciest ride in town. I will be back with some more Numenor content soon. Now everything's been painted and been tested out on the tabletop, I'll have a sort of tips and tricks guide for them. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. Shout out to my patron supporters. Without you, it just wouldn't be possible. And if you want to join, there's merch available for anyone who joins, and super fans get a dice tray very soon. And you, of course, can support the channel via the affiliate link below too. Thanks for watching. Boo-rum.